The DickHeads are presented in color.
All right.
Hey guys, I want to thank you all so much for coming to the celebration of the 40th anniversary of Blade Runner, based on Philip K. Dick's astounding classic, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Today we have a special guest, the DickHeads Podcast, the Philip K. Dick Podcast, and we've got over here David, we have Anthony, we have Larry, and our guest Mark. It's a real pleasure and privilege to have them in our store. They've been just a champion of exploring the works of Philip K. Dick and bringing it to you guys with lots of guests. We're here at Mysterious Galaxy, which is an indie bookstore here in San Diego that specializes in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And so we're just going to give them a big welcome and turn it over to them. Thank you.
All right. Hey, DickHeads, like a pink laser beam of truth, beaming from mysterious galaxies to your brain hole. This is our 40th anniversary of Blade Runner special coverage. We're going to basically just talk about the novel and the movie and its impact, especially talk about that summer. So we're excited to have Mark Conlon back. Mark, you haven't been on the show in a little bit, but we're glad to have you. How you been?
Well, aside from a health crisis I had a while back, I've been fine.
Yes, and we are super stoked to have you back on the show and here with us. Why don't you introduce the folks to the folks who you are again, just in case they're a new listener, and your background in science fiction.
My name is Mark Gabrish Conlon, and for 18 years I published a community news magazine called Zingers, and that's how I met David. He was involved in some protests I was writing about, and I've been a fan of science fiction since the early 70s, and took a class in it, and came close to meeting Philip K. Dick. Unfortunately, the teacher of the science fiction class at College of Marin, I had scheduled him for a lecture, but he backed out at the last minute.
Now, Mark, you've been on the show 6 times. This is the first time you've actually talked about Philip K. Dick. Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Okay.
You talked about Norman Spinrad twice. You talked about Heinlein twice. But this is the first time you got to talk about Philip K. Dick. When did you first read Philip K. Dick?
Actually, I first read the novel Galactic Pot Healer back when I was taking that science fiction class in junior college.
One of our favorites.
And
one of Anthony's
what?
favorites.
Great book.
Yeah.
Great book.
All right, not Larry's, but it's a favorite of many of us.
That's fine. You all like Man in the High Castle.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa! Shots fired.
I especially love the character of Cavorton Gary Carnes, the DJ.
In Galactic Pot Healer?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Well, there's always fun and interesting jobs for Philip K. Dick characters. So we're really excited to be here at Mysterious Galaxies. It's one of my favorite stores. I bought a couple of the copies of the books that I have highlighted like crazy to cover on this show, including this copy of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is like super highlighted and crazy nuts. But anyways, let's talk about the importance of this anniversary, starting with Larry. What has Blade Runner meant to you as a movie?
Wow, I wasn't expecting to get
Start
that
off.
kind of in-depth question. What has it meant to me as a movie?
Do you need Anthony to go?
No, I think what it meant to me as a movie is more about how it came out in different versions than anything that's in the movie or in the book or anything. It's that it took them so long to just figure out how to make it a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, by getting rid of certain aspects and bringing back aspects, and you know that to me is what showed that movies, no matter what state they come out as in the theater, they can always become something great.
Mm-hmm.
Because Blade Runner was fun when I was a kid, but it wasn't great until they took out all that damn
The
Ford
narration.
narration.
There's a few people that are fans of the narration. I can't.
I know.
Yeah. It's one of those things. But yeah, for the people who saw it 40 years ago today, they got the narration.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's important to note that Philip K. Dick only saw 20 minutes of the movie before he died. That he actually died that spring before the movie came out, but he was able to meet Ridley Scott and see 20 minutes of the film. He was very happy with it. Of course, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot missing, but we'll talk about that more later. Anthony, Blade Runner for you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I was duped. I thought we were talking about Screamers.
Oh, yes.
We are not.
Yeah.
No, Blade
Your
Runner.
favorite.
I love Screamers. Blade Runner to me. Well, I grew up with that movie, and as a kid, it's visually astounding. But I think what I've taken from Blade Runner over the years is that it really taught me how to have empathy for the villain in the form of Roy Batty and Pris. And so I think that kind of showcasing that even like who we're supposed to perceive as the bad guys can still have a backstory and can still be complex characters despite being, back-grown humans, replicants. But I would say that's my biggest takeaway from it.
Well, and Phil had a tendency to base characters off of real-life friends of his, and Roy Batty, it should be noted, was based on Ray Nelson, who wrote the story that They Live was based on, and is also considered the inventor of the propeller hat. So, which he wore to a science fiction convention in 1947. And so, therefore, Roy Batty, inventor of the propeller hat.
Yeah.
Mark, what's your feelings on the movie Blade Runner before we talk about the novel?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of back of scratch on a lot of this because I had not seen the movie until 2019.
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't.
Mark.
I was just blown away in my chair.
And I'm still making my way through the book. So it struck me as the sort of science fiction movie the director Joseph von Sternberg would have made if he had made one. It's very dark, very smoky, very atmospheric. It's kind of, and the only version I have seen is the middle one, the so-called director's cut, even though it's
not the final cut.
Even though it's the one that Ridley Scott had the least to do with editing. But
well, he didn't even bother reading the novel, so.
Oh well,
no, he didn't. He said it was too complicated.
And there's one story that I've heard, and I'd like some of the other people on the podcast to let me know if this is true or not. That Philip K. Dick actually had a contract to write a novel of Blade Runner that would go back to androids, but incorporate the changes that the screenwriters had made in the movie.
That's almost true. What happened was, Del Rey offered him a huge payday to do a novelization of the script, and he chose less money, but to keep his original novel and he made that decision because it was so different, but also because strategically he thought it was better for his career long term. Of course, he had no idea that he was about to die. But long term, he thought he was better off, just repackaging the novel. And I think
that's where he did get paid. He got paid to repackage and put the cover that everybody knows.
But he left a lot of money on the table not to novelize.
Yeah.
And on
he
our
didn't want to be Alan Dean Foster.
Yeah, on our episode about Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, we have the exact numbers of the money. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a lot. It was a significant portion of money. But he felt like he was gonna get it in other ways. Also, truth be told, he didn't think he could write it. He was in such a different headspace writing his Valis books. He did not believe that he could get into writing a science fiction novel that they wanted. So it was partially the reason he didn't do it is because he didn't think he could. He just didn't think he was in that space anymore. So
He said get Alan Dean Foster to do it.
yeah. But he didn't want that. He wanted the original novel to come out, and that's how we got the edition, the Del Rey edition, that has the poster for the movie, and then it says in parentheses, "Do androids dream of electric sheep?"
In parentheses.
And
It does.
I know.
and
Yeah.
the cover blurb says, "Now a spellbinding motion picture,"
Yep.
Yeah.
as if the publishers were so confused by the whole story that that was the only positive adjective they could come up with.
Spellbinding. Yeah.
Well, I read the Stand a long time ago in the 80s, and my copy of the Stand, which came out in I think late 70s,
I know where
early
you're going
80s,
with this. Yeah.
on the back cover it said "soon to be a major motion picture."
Yeah, and that was George Romero had like.
Yeah, it was supposedly going to come out with a movie.
Yeah,
but that
George
never
Romero.
came.
George Romero was supposed to make a movie of The Stand, and it never happened. And there was like 4 or 5 false starts on it, and yeah, that happened from time to time back in the day then. So let's talk about the novel and our relationship to it, because it's a very everyone knows that Blade Runner is not a very faithful adaptation. There were 2 screenwriters that worked on the movie. And Hampton Fancher, who was the first screenwriter, his first
Great name, by the way.
yeah,
Could be a character in a Philcade.
his 1980s script for Blade Runner is much closer to the novel, and all the scenes that are straight out of the novel, like the scene with Rachel Rosen, are all word for word in the first script. And when David Peoples, who was hired to write the final draft based on his script that would eventually become the Clint Eastwood movie, The Unforgiven, was floating around Hollywood in 1980, and everyone thought it was the best unproduced script at the time. So it was a big get to get David Peoples, who would eventually go on to write 12 Monkeys as well. And when he was hired, he said to Ridley Scott, "I have to read the novel," and Ridley Scott told him, "No, don't read the novel. I don't want you reading the novel. It's too complicated. I don't like it." So David...
How does he know if he didn't read it himself?
Exactly. And so David Peoples was literally told by Ridley Scott not to read the novel, which is very frustrating as fans of the novel. And me
And that's
personally...
how you end up with Alien Covenant.
Well, one
Yeah.
person at this table is not a big fan of the novel.
Yeah.
That person's me.
Right. Well, I will say this month was the 4th time I read this novel. And I will say that every time I read this novel, I like it more. And this is the most, because I went through it looking for trivia every day for this reread. I have more and more respect for this novel every time that I read it. And we can talk about this later, but I'm more interested in what you guys are thinking about it. But a lot of the differences between the novel and the movie and what makes it is the philosophical angles to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep are immense, and all of that is ejected in the movie. The movie is just an adventure, an action story about hunting down replicants, and there are faithful moments like the Voight-Kampff test and things like that are in it. So it would be unfair to say it is not based on the novel. But so much of what makes this novel so cool is not at all in the movie. The movie is like it's its own thing. And I love the movie. I love Blade Runner. But they are so different in so many ways. And Larry, this was your first Philip K. Dick novel that you read too. It was mine too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I read it because of Blade Runner. And
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody our age basically read it because of Blade Runner.
Because you would hear, like, I read a lot of Starlog magazine back then, and they would talk about how different the novel was from the finished product, and then that made me curious to want to read it.
For me it was, I was reading Judy Blume, and then I got into Douglas Adams. Douglas Adams led directly to reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, just because it had that movie cover on it.
Right. Well,
It's in the same section.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why probably you don't like this novel as much, Anthony.
Larry will tell you it's because there's lack of explosions.
There's no explosions.
There are laser tubes all over it. There are weapons. But anyways, but I think part of it is that you were such a fan of Blade Runner and you loved Blade Runner for so long that, and you read this very late in the process of us doing
Yeah, I didn't
the
read it
podcast.
until we started the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that by that time you had Blade Runner so much in your head, right? That you found, I would assume that's why you found this kind of disappointing. I mean, we talked about it already in our episode, but
Yeah, we don't need to retread that. I don't need any more hate mail.
well, no, you have the right to that opinion. I mean,
Let's talk about how much I don't like the Cosmic Puppets. Anyway.
yes, that is of course the one we all agree on is terrible.
Yeah.
And Mark, you said you're rereading this now, or you're?
I'd never read it before.
Oh, you never
It's
read it before. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I better cram for this. And I have the copy I picked up with it, which was also the movie tie-in edition.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting to hear the stories of why the book and the movie are so different. Even though one part of me is thinking, well, this was, as I understand, the first Philip K. Dick story ever to be filmed.
Yes, it was the first.
And
outside of, there was some TV adaptation of
A story, right?
it was Imposter, the one that
Yeah.
eventually was made into a movie with the guy from Forrest Gump. I'm brain farting his name, but but there was an attempt in the 60s to make Imposter, but it's like lost to time. You can't find it anywhere. It's impossible. And believe me, I have tried. So, so really it is the first. Yeah.
So, and it did occur to me that I can see why this was the first, because it's one of his simplest novels, one of his least digressive, one of his least, into the paranoid worldview he was famous for.
Yeah.
Oh man, see, I disagree. I think maybe it's because I've read it 4 times, but when you really get into this novel, there are deep levels, I think.
Yeah, but but it's not that paranoia aspect. It's more about religion in this one. And
Well, it's
different
about
aspects of religious.
it's about
belief
empathy and
and yeah.
philosophical, beliefs. Because for anyone who only knows the movie, they know that a lot of the story rests on the idea of that Deckard is a bounty hunter and he's hunting replicants. In the novel, they're called Andes, and but so much of the book is based on the commerce of in this world. In the novel, more it's in the movie, the fake animals, the owls, those things, but it's very subtle. In the book, it's all over the place. It's keeping up with the Joneses. If you're really cool, you've got a horse or a sheep or a cow, and so much to the point that people buy fake electronic animals to look like, and there's scenes with electronic cats. And what's really funny to me that I didn't notice in earlier readings of the book is all the animals have hilarious names. Scruffy, Buffy, Scrappy, like throughout the book. And it's, because Dick is underrated for his humor as well. That is one of the things that's going on there. But yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of trivia as a way to talk about the novel. And we do have books for prizes. This was, all these trivia questions were on our Facebook this month. So
And Twitter.
And so you could have had access to them, but Larry's going to ask them. You did have access to them. I know they're going to be we don't have to do all of them. But and we'll see, because if nobody can answer them, I'll do my best.
And then I'll huck a book at you. All right, let's
You
see.
just
Where do
pick
we
one.
want to start? Let's start here. Well, not here per se, but well, close enough.
What is here anyway, Larry?
Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere.
What is reality?
Back to philosophy. What author who has done multiple book signings at Mysterious Galaxy was the book dedicated to? I left out the not this location.
Yeah, he did. This book was dedicated to an author who has done multiple signings at Mysterious Galaxies.
Really?
Rob.
You introduced this author, probably.
Yeah, he
That
did.
is, yeah, he did. Because you could win one of these books if you just.
Anthony and I smoked cigarettes with his wife. So.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happens.
He knows nothing about technology.
No. Ray Bradbury.
Oh, that's
Nope.
a close one.
That's a good guess.
Good
Southern
guess.
California writer. This guy graduated from this university that I'm wearing the shirt for.
William Bill.
No,
No.
not Bill.
It's not Bill Nolan. Another LA writer, so that was a decent guess. You don't know? Nobody knows? It was dedicated to Tim Powers and his wife. Now, here's what makes this really funny and interesting is Tim Powers was 16 years old when the book came out. So when I saw that, I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. The original edition was not dedicated to Tim Powers. It was only subsequent paperback editions. Phil changed it because he had dedicated the first edition to, there was a bishop, James Pike, who was very famous, and his mistress committed suicide, and he dedicated the book to her. And then I apparently decided that was weird. And
Even by Philip K.
he took standards, yeah, and changed it to Tim Powers. And Tim Powers, who he met when he was a student at Cal State Fullerton, where Philip K. Dick was a regular lecturing in Professor McNeely's science fiction classes. And that's how I met Tim Powers.
So give yourself a book, David. You got it right.
Who wants a book? Yeah.
Well, here's a general knowledge PKD question.
I'll look the other way.
PKD was married 5 times. This novel was written between which marriages? And it's the numbers, not the person. Although if you know the name of the people, that would be
Pretty
impressive.
impressive. It was between marriages, what and what?
2 and 3.
Close.
3 and
4.
3 and 4! Take a look, Charles.
But they were all blended.
Yes, this happened between the marriages to Anne and Nancy. And he was in the glow of just meeting Nancy when he wrote this book. The glow of the new relationship with Nancy. Yep. Who he had his daughter Issa with, who is now producing movies based on his work.
Weren't they all sort of based on a sister? And
Well,
Sort of.
there is
yeah.
that character as well. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters based on his twin sister who died very briefly after he was born. And Anthony has visited her grave.
I have.
Yeah.
Is that here in San Diego?
No,
it's in Colorado.
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 Okay, Larry, give us another one.
All right. What year was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep written? And also, what year was it released? Either one of those questions would be.
1978?
Nope.
released in 68?
It was released in 68. And it was written in
65.
close.
Close.
But you
66.
still can take a book if you want one, Rob.
Good for you.
Like you don't
Rob.
see books every day.
I know, but you have enough books.
Do you want to win a work item, Rob?
Yeah.
So, yes, Philip K. Dick wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in spring of 1966, and it was delivered to the SMLA Literary Agency on June 20th, 1966. That's when they opened the envelope and said, okay, we got to sell this thing. So it took 2 years from that point. So, Yeah, 66 to 68.
What's that one question?
In his own lifetime, was the Android Dream his most successful book?
Not in his lifetime, no. In his lifetime, his most successful book was the Do-Si-Do version of The Solar Lottery and The Big Jump by Lee Brackett.
Oh,
That was, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
His very first published book was the most copies of anything that sold in his lifetime.
Wow.
And that is partially because Lee Brackett was very popular in the 50s. So it had very little to do with
They
Solar
piggybacked.
Lottery. Yeah.
Although I think Solar Lottery is criminally underrated.
And so is The Big Jump by Lee Brackett that it was Do-Si-Do with. It's a great book, which we did an episode about.
And
Earlier this year.
Lee Brackett was a screenwriter on at
Empire.
least 2 Humphrey Bogart movies, To Have and
Mhm.
Have Not in The Big Sleep.
That's right. Yeah, Lee Brackett's last job before she died was writing the first draft of Empire Strikes Back. So, yeah, she was great. Great writer. Larry, give us another trivia.
All right. Well, I'm sort of going to rephrase one of your questions here.
Okay.
In the book, there's another Blade Runner, bounty hunter called Phil Resch. What pet did Phil Resch have at his house? What type of animal?
So he was convinced he was not an android, even though everyone told him he was, because he had this pet.
A fish?
Although he did work at the central robot house,
Yeah, he worked at the robot
police station.
There's an entire police station that had been taken over by androids, and he worked there, and he was the one human that worked there.
No, nope. Huh?
Close, but no.
Oh, I can't remember.
An owl?
Uh-uh.
Hamster?
I can't remember either.
What?
Hamster.
It's a good
No.
guess.
Komodo dragon.
I wish.
Yeah, right.
Nope, it was
It was Buffy the squirrel.
Buffy the squirrel. Yeah, he had a squirrel.
Would have never guessed squirrel.
Buffy the squirrel. And he was so proud that Buffy was as shiny as an otter.
Shiny as an otter, whatever that
Shiny
means.
as an otter in one scene, he was described as. Because he's like, I can't be an android. I take such good care of my squirrels. She's shiny like an otter. It's great. Very funny part. Larry.
So, again, in the novel, how much does a bounty hunter earn for retiring an Andy?
How much money?
Cash in hand.
$1,000.
It is $1,000.
It's $1,000! Take another book, girl.
Wow.
And it's $1,000. I think you'll like that one. You can switch if you want to. But yes, it's $1,000, and the whole motivation throughout the book is he has to get 5 Andys so he can afford to buy a goat.
A goat.
Yeah, yeah, because he wants a goat on his roof to show how empathetic he is. Yeah.
But instead, he ends up with the toad.
Well, he does buy the goat, but somebody steals the goat.
Murdered goat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, his wife kills the goat, right? Or something?
No. It's
Rachel kills him.
Rachel kills the goat.
Oh, it's Rachel that killed. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew someone killed the goat.
Yeah. So, and then in the end he gets the toad, which relates to one of the horrible almost titles for this book.
Yeah, and that's the best question. What are any of the alternate titles to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah, Phil K. Dick
Phil
tried.
K. Dick had several different.
So anybody who
titles.
listens to our show knows that Phil K. Dick always has terrible titles first.
He was not good at naming his books.
And his editors always had to step in and change his titles. And what's your least favorite, Anthony?
Earth's Diurnal.
Core. Or
Something.
no,
Course.
Course.
Earth Diurnal Course, which he tried to use
Thank you,
twice.
Anthony.
Diurnal Course.
He tried to
Yeah,
name,
yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony.
he tried to name Dr. Blood Money and Ganymede Takeover with that same title,
God, that title sucks.
and failed both times. But yeah, so he had 3 titles before this. Any guesses? It does. In fact,
Do androids lick toads?
No, it is not Do Androids Lick Toads.
Go ahead. You do the title.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're written down here, are they?
Yeah, they are written down there. The Electric Toad was one. But the worst one was, you're going to have to read the worst one, Larry, because it's very long.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I see.
Get ready. It's
so
terrible.
There's the Electric Toad, Do Androids Dream?
Mhm.
That's still one title, right?
It's still one title.
Okay,
Yeah.
Do Androids Dream, / The Electric Sheep. And the best one of all, The Killers Are Among Us, cried Rick Deckard to the special man.
Yes.
You take up the whole front side of the book and everything.
Wow, yeah. All right, one more trivia. And then
One thing I hadn't realized until I started reading Do Androids Dream of the Electric Sheep is that there actually is an electric sheep in the book. It's not just
a metaphor.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not The Catcher in the Rye in this one.
Right.
There is truly an electric sheep.
It is quite literal.
Yeah.
Well, the question I would like, this is more about the movie, obviously. Name 3 other movies that came out in 1982.
That just in any movie or
Any movie that came out in 1982.
Came out the same day,
Today.
40 years ago today. Yep.
Peep Show, Poltergeist, Tron.
take all the books, Rob.
82 is like
Anything that's really good and memorable came out in 1982.
Yeah, choose the right question.
So my list of the summer of 82 movies are Tron, E.T., The Wrath of Khan, Conan the Barbarian, Fast Times, Rocky 3, awesome, Blade Runner, and most importantly, The Road Warrior.
Oh.
I forgot about Road Warrior.
82 was banging.
Yeah, right.
And I have-
It was a great year.
I have irritated some of my fellow film buffs by saying that John Carpenter's The Thing is better than the 1951 original.
It's
What?
absolutely
It's
better.
It
Absolutely
absolutely is better.
Yeah. Well, I'm eventually wanting to do a podcast about the story, who goes there, so I might have to come back.
Which I do like the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the story's great, and it's a more faithful adaptation. The Carpenter's The Thing is a more faithful adaptation of the story.
He kept the shape-shifting capability of Campbell's original, which Charles Lederer, who wrote the 1951 version, got rid of.
Yeah, he just turned him into like a Dracula guy. Yeah, which was
The limits of the technology, though, were
Okay, are there
apparent in that one.
any other of the trivia questions you want to talk about?
I know if they could turn Lon Chaney Jr. into a werewolf, they could have done The Thing shape-shifted in 1951.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But we can do the Voight Kampf one.
Oh, sure. Ask.
So here's the Voight Kampf question. When giving Rachel Rosen the Voight Kampf test, Rick Deckard skips to the third question to start.
Mm-hmm. So the
Question
Voight
is,
Kampf test is
You
the
are given a calfskin wallet for your birthday. How does she answer that question?
So the Voight Kampf test is the test that proves whether you're an android or not. So,
How does she respond to
In the book or the movie?
in the movie?
it's the same.
She
Yeah.
says she'll turn over to the authorities.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right. And
Report them to the police.
yeah. So part of the whole thing of the Voight Kampf test is it's all based on our empathy towards animals, which, of course, as somebody who's been vegan for almost 30 years, I just assume that all of civilization will not pass this test. And what it's really, and I'm currently working on an article called Do Androids Dream of Animal Rights, where I talk about the fact that it is implicit in the book that everyone in this world is vegetarian. Because, and part of one of the reasons why it is proven in the book is that post-World War terminus, which is the war in the book, the nuclear war, there are not enough animals. That's why they're revered. So they're definitely not eating animals. And so so when you consider that the whole empathy test is all based on like how people's empathy towards animals, plus the whole religion of mercerism, which is in the book. And these are all things that are not in the movie, right? They're implicit in the novel. It's one of the things that makes the novel, I think, so much superior to the movie. Me personally, which I know everyone's shaking their heads at me. Like
I don't know if you
They're
can
both
really
very
compare them.
Yeah, they're
They're
hard to
two
compare.
very separate
I
things.
think the whole question about the Trudeau show is her, having a level of empathy and the hesitation she has in the film.
Mm.
That it's not just I'm trying to reason about the right answer. I think that's one of the first glimmers in the film that she indeed is capable of empathy.
Right. Which in the book she murders the goat at the end.
In the book, she has no empathy at all.
Yeah. Yep. As it makes.
Yeah, she's terrible in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she is like.
Yeah. Well, and
But that's Philip K. Dick, He
it was very
really had some issues with women.
well. It's also the issue that Philip K. Dick wanted to make clear that androids do not have, ethical. They don't have empathy, and that's like one of the things that makes them androids. And that's like one of the things that he wanted to explore with this novel.
I think that spider scene really, nailed it. I don't know if the goat thing was necessary.
Yeah.
And I know I have heard that Philip K. Dick's original inspiration for the novel was the research he did for The Man in the High Castle, that he read the records of the Nazis at Nuremberg being interrogated, and he realized that the Nazis had no empathy.
Yeah, we talked about that. I don't know if it was about. Was it about this book or was it about a different book that he?
It was about. We talked about it in relation to High Castle. Yeah, it was research for it. But yeah, I mean that's a huge part of it, and
I'm sure that affected a lot of his books. The way he really sat down in his little shack and studied all those those reports.
And one of the stories that was really impactful was the story that Himmler was so worried that his soldiers would develop trauma from having to shoot Jews that's why he created the gas chambers. Because he was like, he didn't want his soldiers to go through the trauma of shooting people. And this story was, very horrifying and impactful for Phil for talking about the concept of empathy. And like, here's this, it's just insane to think that, he was so worried about the feelings of his soldiers having to murder people, and
But the lack of empathy is sort of like the main characteristic of a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
So if Himmler was concerned about the impact, the trauma impact on his soldiers, to me that indicates.
He's not a sociopath, he's just evil.
Yeah.
Well, to me, evil
Truly.
and sociopath are, they're the same thing. But I mean, how? I just.
Yeah, it's hard to, and that's one of the things that's so cool about this novel, in my opinion, is from top to bottom, you can look at this as an adventure story about hunting robots. And yes, it's an allegory for hunting in general, like what Rick Deckard's going through. But the whole novel is a philosophical exploration of the concept of empathy and what is human, what is not human, and what makes empathy and what, and that's what makes it a deeper novel. And I think all those things are there in Blade Runner, but because there's the spectacle and like everything, it's not as obvious as it is when you read the book. And I would also say that for me, as a person who's read it 4 times, like the deeper you read this novel, and if you sit with a highlighter and pick out parts, there are amazing moments of philosophical study of empathy throughout the book.
But don't do that.
But you don't have
Just read the book and have a good time.
Yeah, you can do that too. Does anybody have any questions? Because
We have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, we're running out of time. That was a great question, Linda. But if anybody has any questions that they want to ask, Charles, any?
I actually do. I have a quickie.
Yeah.
So the movie industry has been having quite a field day with his work, and unfortunately, the guy isn't around to reap the rewards of that. So, does he have like an estate or family members or somebody that's getting paid off of all this stuff?
Yeah, 2 of his daughters run a production company called Electric Sheep Productions, and they were highly involved in the Man in the High Castle series, Adjustment Bureau. They've just recently greenlit an adaptation of Vulcan's Hammer that they're working on with the director of The Hunger Games.
But not all of his stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that came out was, I think it just basically went out into the ether, the rights to his stuff.
Well, no,
for a
some of it
while.
was sold before he died, and those floated around. And there's a real famous story about the first script that he saw for this book. He threatened to beat the guy up when he read the script because it was so bad. And that's the guy who eventually produced Motel Hell. And apparently his version of the script was like a comedy.
Hey, filmmaking at its finest, dude.
I know, I love Motel.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Well, like Minority Report, wasn't that based on one of Philip K. Dick's? Okay, so somebody made a bunch of money on that.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg.
But he bought the rights. They bought the
Tom
rights from the family. And but some of the like Total Recall was purchased in his lifetime, like the rights to to the short story for Total Recall, and the rights to I believe Minority Report was actually sold before he died. So, and because originally Minority Report was going to be a sequel to Total Recall.
Well, when did he die?
1982. He died the same year that Blade Runner came out. He only saw 20 minutes of it.
Did he see it?
20 minutes of it. There was only 20 minutes finished when
Aw.
he met Ridley Scott. Yeah.
That's about all the time we have.
Yeah. But so yeah, just to wrap things up, it was quite a summer for movies, and I think Blade Runner and the impact 40 years later, it's really powerful. That I love it that it just keeps bringing people back to his work. And there is talk now of a Blade Runner TV series. They're supposedly calling
Well, actually, they're making that.
Blade Runner 2099 is what they're saying. They're shooting ahead 50 years from the last movie. Should be interesting. They should definitely hire us to write on it.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Yes.
David and I had to agree to disagree on Blade Runner 2049. He loves it. I thought if the Academy gave an award for the all-time worst sequel to a great movie, it would deserve it.
I so disagree.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't see Superman 3? Or 4?
That's a sequel to a sequel. It didn't
Or
get it.
Matrix too. That was
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Or the most recent Matrix.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Well, I will say.
We mentioned
Matrix Recycle.
we mentioned
Yeah.
we mentioned the film They Live earlier,
Mhm.
and I was just telling David that I think John Carpenter did more about the whole theme of we are, everything we believe about a reality is illusion. He did more with that in one 105-minute movie than the Wachowskis did in 4 135 to 150-minute movies.
And it was one of Philip K. Dick's best friends who wrote the story that it was based on. So tying it in. Okay.
I really liked the third Matrix, the Wachowski's third.
Ugh.
Oh yeah, I really did. I got
Yeah,
really into
I'm
that.
actually with Lois on that.
The third one was entertaining. It was fun. It was exciting.
Here's what I have to say. Ugh.
Oh,
All right. It's all right. To wrap things up, it was interesting that you brought up that we did not bring up the sequel. I actually do. Yeah, Larry and I are definitely fans of the sequel. Anthony and I saw it in the theater together.
I've seen it twice in the theater. It's
Yeah,
great. Visually great. I love 80% of that movie.
Yeah.
I love it. It could have definitely lost a few minutes, but and I could have lived without Harrison Ford in it. But
Yeah, same.
yeah, but at the same time, I really appreciate.
Yeah, but Villeneuve, this new Dune could have lost.
Oh, about an hour.
Yeah.
I disagree.
About an hour.
Especially since it's just
Half
the
a
first
movie.
half of
Yeah.
Half of
the book.
Yeah. All right. Let's put a pin in it.
All right, yeah. So thank you, Mysterious Galaxies, for hosting us.
Thank you, Rob, and everybody.
Yeah, Mysterious Galaxies is a great bookstore. You can shop there online, so it's a great bookstore to support. Even if you're not in San Diego, you can order books through them. And I have,
Website in the show notes.
yeah, website in the show notes. Definitely support Mysterious Galaxies.
Mysterious Galaxy.
Mysterious Galaxy.
Singular.
Yes.
It's only one galaxy.
And if you stop by the store and shop here, say hi to Rob because he's one of you. He's a dickhead as well. And yeah. And thank you, everyone. And as always, keep it paranoid.
Stay paranoid.
Yeah.
One of us.
Yeah.